Hey guys, what's going on? It's the Interior Auto Mechanic. Today I'm just going to give you basically a garage update for 2025. I know in the last video I kind of showed you what the plan is for the Yaris and basically telling you that it's going to be down for just a little bit while we get the new motor put in and also while I get the transmission built. So in the meantime, I'm kind of needing something to drive for events. I guess I don't have to do it, but the racer in me, which is not very good one, but still, the racer in me wants a car to drive. So, without further ado, I'm just going to show you guys what the replacement is for the Yaris for early 2025, and then hopefully I'll be back into the Yaris, hopefully early summer, maybe midsummer at the latest. But we all know how projects go, and it could just take longer than expected. So, don't get your hopes up on that just yet, but I've got something that is equally cool, at least in my opinion, and let's just go ahead and show it to you. Hopefully you guys like the car as much as I do. Overall, I would say the car probably presents at about an 8 out of 10, somewhere around there, maybe a 7.5 out of 10. It's definitely not a show car, but it is better than probably 90% of the Civics that are out there from this generation. So if you don't know, this generation ran from 1988 to 1991. This is considered an EF body style of a Civic. So it's just before the EG, which is this little bubble one. That's the gold car right there. And this motor here is a D-Series engine, is what it's considered. So this one is a D16A6, which you can probably see on the block there. And the D-Series motor ran from 1988 all the way up to 2005. As it went on, they kind of got less and less loved. The pinnacle, if you will, D-Series engine to most people would be 96 to 2000. It's a Y8 is what it's considered. That's a VTEC motor. In my humble opinion, I never really cared for the Y8 just because most of the time those had enough power to blow themselves up. And I race a Yaris and I like reliability. That's why I like this motor too. I'm not saying that this one couldn't blow up, but these cars only came with about 105 to 110 horsepower when they were brand new. So this motor here has a ton of miles, actually more on this motor than what's on the car because it's already been replaced once because the last person let the timing belt snap. And while this motor has a lot of miles on it, it still runs great. So as you can probably tell, this car is modified a little bit, which typically goes against my rule of buying other people's modified cars. So this car was actually put together by a gentleman that worked and was very high up at a suspension company. The suspension company has been around for a long time. They work with OEMs as well, and then military and public transit and trains. Their main aftermarket for cars, suspension-wise, would be considered yellows. So I think if you know anything about racing, you'll probably know this company very well. Their suspension is very popular in the Honda community. But the reason I'm telling you all this is because this car was set up by him, and he is also a person that does a lot of track driving as well. This car has done multiple HPDEs and also has done quite a few autocrosses as well. A little bit of backstory on this car. We actually owned this car about 10 years ago when it had the bad motor that I mentioned. And I had been seeing it at a local mechanic shop just sitting in the grass, and it sat there for probably 6 or 8 months. I finally just decided to stop in and ask, hey, what's going on with the Civic? And they told me that it had a bad motor, the timing belt had snapped, and they didn't know what the owner wanted to do with it. So, long story short, we ended up buying it, and it was going to be a shop project, but that never happened. So the car just ended up sitting for probably a year. And then the previous owner that I just purchased it back from was actually looking for a project to do with his son, and this is what they built. So the previous owner has raced CRXs for years, so this motor is actually out of a Y49 yellow CRX, and as long as the Y49 curse does not come with that motor, I am perfectly happy and fine with that. If you're not familiar with that, basically Y49 is the color code on the 88 to 91 CRXs that are yellow, and I believe it's only 88 and 89. Those cars always got wrecked way before any of the other ones. The yellow ones always got wrecked, and it's rare to see a yellow CRX anymore for that reason. We're not too concerned about all that, hopefully. What we are concerned about, and what you are probably concerned about, is what is done to this motor. And it's not much. To be fair, it's not really set up to be a super fast in a straight line car. This car is meant to handle well on a track and hold its own, and it really does. I'll circle back to that in a second. Talking about modifications, we have a cold air intake, which I have to change out because the previous owner's son wants that back for his CRX. We have a header with a full exhaust all the way back. I'm pretty sure this is like a no-name header. Again, something else that I am changing. They don't want this one back, but I've got a better one that is sitting on a shelf. Also, it has a lightweight flywheel and a newer clutch in it, like a stage 1 clutch. And then the only other modification he said is possibly an aftermarket cam gear. He couldn't remember if it had a aftermarket cam gear or not, so that one we're up in the air on. All I know is this car runs fantastic, it drives fantastic, it literally drives like it is on rails. You just point it and it goes. Going back to another reason why this car kind of has a special place in my heart, aside from owning it before, I've actually raced this car before. The previous owner invited me up to a autocross event. It was my first one that I've ever done, and we drove this car, and surprisingly enough, I did really, really well. It was just a beginner's class, but I think out of 18 people, I ended up getting third. So I was pretty happy with that. I even got a little trophy for it and everything. So not bad for my first time out. We're not looking to set the world on fire with this car, just like we aren't with the Yaris either. But I just want something that's going to be fun, that's dependable, and that I can just take to the track and have a good time with while this old girl's getting fixed. Like I said, there's going to be a few things that I've got to change on this car, and one of which is the wheels and tires. The tires themselves are super old, but the previous owner wanted the wheels back, which that's not a problem at all. I don't particularly care for these wheels. I've looked for some different ones, but I think ultimately I know what I'm going to go with, at least for right now. And when I say right now, I'm talking about prior to race season. Something that we can take to Cars and Coffee and it looks good, and I'll just go ahead and show you those. And it's these bad boys right here. So these are a vintage wheel. They're period correct for the EF. These are probably made very late 80s, early 90s. They're a Lover's Soul Classic Spirits, and these are perfect if you're just going to take it to like Cars and Coffee, because these wheels are so incredibly heavy. They're not good for track use, but they look really good on the car. The tires are a little bit dirty just from moving this car around in and out of our building, but the tires themselves have like 500 miles on them. The rims overall are just in fantastic shape. These are like a 16x7 wheel, if I remember correctly. So my thoughts are it should fill out the wheel well a little bit more, so we have a little less wheel gap between our wheel and our inner lip or lip of our quarter panel. I just think that the wheels will make the car look really good. I'm probably going to end up swapping these tires off of the Yaris, the wheels and tires off the Yaris, over to the Civic when it comes to be race season. There's probably a little bit too much meat on the sidewall for them. It beats them just sitting and not getting used. The good thing is the Yaris is a 4x100 lug pattern, and so is the Civic. So minus maybe some hub-centric rings, we should be able to swap those over relatively easily and not have any issues. Now, like I said, I've got a couple parts. I don't have as many as like I did for the Yaris sitting around for this thing. A couple of the cool things that I've got are a brand new header and also a cold air intake. Now, the cold air intake is an older one, but it's a good one. That's considered an Iceman cold air intake, and it is plastic. Thoughts behind that are, it won't hold as much heat as like what an aluminum cold air intake would. So temperature should stay down on that. And it's actually set up for a CRX. It's bent and everything for either a CRX or a Civic. That's been on my shelf forever. It looks like crap, but a can of spray paint, some black paint, it'll look good again. Next in line, I've got this monstrosity looking of a thing, and this is a really nice header, actually. If I remember right, I think this is a Bisimoto header or a knockoff Bisimoto. If it is a knockoff, it's actually a pretty decent one. The welds are all really good. And I bought that years ago for a different project that I wanted to do. And it's kind of a common theme in this garage. I get a project in my head, I start buying some parts for it, and sometimes they come to fruition, but a lot of times they don't. So this has been sitting on the shelf for a while. Everything from what I can tell should clear up here perfectly fine, because we have no extra fan over here. We're only running one fan, and that header comes out quite a bit and will come close to the radiator, but it shouldn't hit or anything like that. So we should be good there. Few other things that I'm planning on upgrading. I would like to put maybe 2 pusher fans on the front of this radiator just to run to a toggle switch, so that when we're coming off the track with it, I can just flip those and make sure that it's getting cooled down adequately. Possibly upgrade to an aluminum radiator if I keep this thing long term. Really, the only other thing that I want to do is I want to swap out these seats, and it's probably not for the reason that you're thinking. These seats are fantastic. They are seriously some of the nicest EF Civic seats or CRX seats that you're going to find. These in particular actually have kind of a cool story as well. Like I said, previous owner was, and still is, very much into SCCA racing. Had a friend of his reach out to him on these seats, and these actually have roughly 4,000, maybe 5,000 miles on them total. The car that these came out of was basically a factory-built race car. It wasn't built at the factory, I should say, but the previous owner bought the car brand new, took it home, took all the seats, took all the interior out of it, and made it into a race car. So these sat in his garage for almost 30 years and didn't have any miles on them. When the previous owner got a hold of these seats, he ended up putting them in this car. And funny enough, I still have the seats for this car because I bought them back off of him just to have in case I ever did end up with this or another one. Because believe it or not, the seats are actually in pretty good shape that were originally in this car. They're not all blown out like they always are. The previous owner ended up opting to put these seats in, and like I said, they might have 4,000 miles on them, maybe 5,000 at absolute most, but it's not much. In the time they owned this car, I think they put somewhere in the neighborhood of around 5,000 miles on it in 10 years of ownership, and the rest of the time it just sat in the garage. I want to upgrade this seat to a fixed back seat, and I love a fixed back seat because I'm not trying to fight with the bolster holding me in. I think I'm going to change back to a factory steering wheel. Reason for that being, I'm not a big Grant GT racing wheel fan. I think they kind of look cheap. So overall, we're probably going to go OEM plus with the look of this car. And the only other things, and I know I keep saying, oh, it's just one more thing, just one more thing. It's typical race car talk, I know. I have another Civic that is this color, and we should have a fender for it and also a green hood, if I remember correctly. As long as it's not damaged, those will be getting changed out, and I promise, I think at that point, I'll be done for a little bit at least. I'm sure once I drive it, I'll want to change something else out. But for the time being, that should get us. So this is probably where I'm going to end the video, at least for today. I'll do another video showing me changing out the stuff on this car. If you guys can, please hit the like button on this video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It means the world to me, and it really helps the channel out. I've got a big goal for the channel this year, and I'm really trying to hit it. I would like to hit 10,000 subscribers. I know that's a big number, but we're already at almost 5,000, so what's another 5,000? Let's figure out how to get there. If we can surpass it, that would be even better. But 10,000 is the goal for this year. If you've got any questions or anything, put it right down in the comment section down below. I'll be happy to respond as fast as I can. If you can, share this with some friends if you think they would like it. If you think somebody else might like the content that I'm making, please share it. A little bit of talk goes a long way, and I would certainly appreciate if you would just share my channel with somebody that you know, and maybe have them subscribe as well. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Good luck on your projects and have a great day.